from a taxpayer's perspective, the cost of the inquiry, and I'm not being specific in this, but in general terms, the biggest sum of money that I've seen out there in the press in speculative terms is possibly less than €1 per person living in the country, based upon the sum that was actually guaranteed, which was €64 billion. If one was to examine what the cost of the inquiry would be to the sum that was actually guaranteed on the night of the banking inquiry, which was in around €400 billion, it would be something like 0.000000025% of the cost. So there was always going to be a cost with the implementation and the conducting of the inquiry. The cost of the banking guarantee and the implications for our society has been huge, and I'm sure that the Irish public do not want to be revisited with a similar type of crisis into the future, and I am very determined that when this inquiry is completed, it will not just establish the facts that led up to this crisis and the other matters pertaining to it, but will also have recommendations for the future.
But is that night not crucial?
Yes, of course the night is crucial, but it would be a mistake to just focus in upon the couple of hours of that night. But the legal advice that we have this evening, or I got this morning, was that there is possibly about a half an hour of that night that is not actually accessible to the inquiry team. However, all the information that led up to that, and that was even used on that night, that actually influenced that decision and led to that decision, is compellable under the terms of the inquiry.
But Kieran, people want to know what happened at that meeting. Who said what? Who objected to the decision, if anyone objected? So should they not be entitled to know that?
Well, there are probably some questions there that you would need to probably put to the people that are actually in that room that night. And I've said this at the very, very start of the process, where I've asked all political parties and none who are parts of the inquiry team to leave their club jerseys at the door. And if some political parties are saying that these are difficulties, I would be saying to them in return to take off that club jersey and to ensure the inquiry does its job properly, and to add to how these solutions can be arrived at, as opposed to actually presenting difficulties that the inquiry team will overcome in time.
Kieran, you obviously can't